Alright. What is your name, rank, and police agency at the time of the crash?
My name is Robert Sylvester. I was a police officer at the time for the San Diego Police Department.
How long did it take? Actually, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about the morning of September 28th, 1978, the Flight 182 crash in North Park, which is a community of the city of San Diego.
How long did it take for you to hear about the crash?
Well, I just got done working a graveyard shift in what we call the Southern Division, which was at the international border down at San Ysidro. My shift ended around 7 a.m. and I was called to a field training officers meeting down at the San Diego Police Headquarters, which was down at downtown San Diego at 801 West Market Street. I got down there at headquarters, and at the time we had a coffee shop at the old police station, and the place was packed, mostly with senior officers as well as detectives who always had their breakfast there before they started their shift. So I was in the, being a 7-month veteran of the police department at the time, and just recently turning 25 years old, I was kind of a new guy, and I was in the coffee shop having a cup of coffee waiting for my meeting at 9 o'clock. Being somewhat tired from working the graveyard shift that morning, I was kind of in a daze, and usually the coffee shop was very noisy, and all of a sudden I realized that I was the only one left in the coffee shop. At that moment I thought to myself, something's going on here. This was around, I'm going to say, a little bit past 9 a.m. I walked out into the middle of the police headquarters, and everybody was running around. Most of the detectives as well as the uniform officers were running to their cars, getting in their police vehicles, marked or unmarked, and basically screaming out of the parking lot. At that point, a uniformed police lieutenant approached me and said to me, "What have you been assigned to?" And I looked at him kind of quizzical and go, "Nothing, what are you talking about?" And he said to me, he goes, go over to supply, get all the burn sheets out of supply and all the emergency equipment that you can, and bring it up to the crash scene. At that moment, I looked over his shoulders and I saw this huge cloud of smoke in the sky. My first thought was like, holy, what the heck happened now? At that point I went in supply, I got all the equipment including all the burn sheets and any type of medical equipment we had in supply, and I was advised by that lieutenant to put it in his vehicle, and at the time we had some station wagons for the supervisors, and that's what he was driving. He gave that to me and says, "Get up there." I told him I really didn't know where the crash was, and he told me that it was up in North Park and go to St. Augustine High School. Being new to San Diego, I'd only lived there for 7 months, I really didn't know where St. Augustine High School was. I had a general idea where North Park was because I did work there for a month before I went down to San Ysidro. So I asked someone for directions and they gave me directions. I got in the police vehicle and started driving that direction on the freeway, and the freeway was stopped with traffic on all freeways including 805, 163, Interstate 94 East, so forth. I had to go code 3, which is lights and siren on the center island or the medium, to get past traffic, and eventually had to cut through traffic to get off the University Avenue and get over to St. Augustine High School. I drove to the front of the school, And of course, at the time, I didn't know what St. Augustine was. I just knew it was a school. I didn't know, I probably didn't even know the name at the time. But I did drive to the front. That's where we had our staging area. Got out to the vehicle. I approached a supervisor. And at the time, what a lot of people probably don't know, a lot of younger people know, back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, the police department also ran the ambulance service for emergencies in San Diego. So we were cross-trained, basically paramedics, but we were called emergency medical technicians. So we were trained in the police academy in this. So this lieutenant said to me, "Are you EMT trained?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Good. Because I want you to take 5 officers, these 5 officers over there, and go into the crash scene and look for survivors." I was somewhat overwhelmed because I was a rookie cop and I was going to have 5 senior guys working for me basically, or helping me in the crash scene. So I went over to the guys and says, "Hey guys, I really don't know what I'm doing." And one of the senior guys looked at me and said, "That's okay. We probably don't know what we're doing either, so let's go together." So we all went in there, and of course we had burn sheets and other medical equipment with us. Once we got into the scene, it was very hectic, and as well as being hectic at the school, with emergency people as well as fire department, police officers, other paramedic units, and I'm sure the children, or students at the school. We went into the crash scene. We were there for quite a long time, but it was quite obvious from the very beginning that there probably wasn't going to be any survivors from this crash.
So what is, you said St. Augustine was the staging area. What does that mean?
What that means is all personnel that were emergency personnel were advised to stage and respond to St. Augustine High School. So that was where all your emergency medical, as well as your police, fire, other agencies that may be assisting us, would come and meet, and they call it a staging area.
It's like home base.
It'd be our home base, yes, correct.
Did you know that they were gonna hold dead bodies there?
It was quite obvious to me after walking the scene that we had to have a large location where they're going to have to bring the deceased. When I first got there, I didn't know that. It was obvious later on when we started bringing out the deceased and putting them in the gymnasium, the old gymnasium, I might add.
How far was like the San Diego Police Department, like headquarters from Saints?
Oh no, our headquarters is right at Saints. Oh, you're talking about the regular police headquarters?
Yeah, like,
Okay, that's right in, if you're familiar with Seaport Village now, in the old police headquarters, that's where we were based out of back in 1978.
near the train tracks.
So it was probably, yes, right next to the train tracks, correct.
Had you heard of like any big crashes like this in San Diego prior to this event?
This was a very devastating airplane crash, and it was probably the largest, if not the largest, in the United States at the time. So it devastated the whole city as well as the whole region, because obviously most people know and have flown in and out of Lindbergh Field on that same track arriving here in San Diego. So a lot of people were really, what it basically did is it made San Diego, which was, we always considered a small town, it made us a big city at that point. The news was national. You had reporters from throughout the United States that came to San Diego because of this devastating incident. It was in the news for several days after that. And I'm sure it was a lead story. And the only reason I'm just going by what people have told me, because I was at the scene until about 6 o'clock that evening. And finally at 6 o'clock, supervisor told me to go home, get a couple hours sleep, and report back to the scene at 10 p.m. So it was going to be a couple hours sleep only, because by the time I got home, went to bed, took 2 hours nap and came back, right back to the scene.
How long were you, like, how long was everyone, like, working to get, to get it cleaned up? And, how long were the bodies at Saints?
Well, you have to remember this crash involved 2 planes, and if I recall, there was at least 3 or 4 houses that the plane landed on in the neighborhood. So it took several days and weeks to secure the area. Obviously, like I said from the beginning, it was quite obvious it was going to be, instead of a rescue, it was going to be a recovery action by all emergency personnel. And like you said, they had a stage at St. Augustine as well as use the gym as a morgue. So, and due to the devastation of the crash, there were body parts all over the neighborhood. So the initial few days,
How did the crash affect San Diego?
well, in my opinion, I think as well as other people, I think up to that moment everybody thought of San Diego as a little small town. And I think this kind of woke up everybody, and everybody started realizing that, you know what, we're kind of a big city. And situations like this are going to occur in San Diego. So kind of a wake-up call, so to speak, questioning whether we're prepared for it, what could be changed, not only with emergency services, but air travel into San Diego and so forth. So I'm going to say that it probably woke up San Diego to being, hey, you know what, we're a big city now. And it obviously was a devastating thing to happen to us.
Did St. Augustine get like financial help, or like penance, or like not penance, but did they get paid basically to redo their gym?
You know, I'm not sure about that. I went back to regular duty a few days after that, and went back to doing what I would normally do during the course of a day in the life of a law enforcement officer. Several years later, I began working that area in North Park, and would always drive by the school, and I realized that this is the school we were at during the plane crash. And I found out a little bit more, obviously, because I was working that area more than before. I never really knew anything about whether there was any monetary response from the city or from someone else to assist St. Augustine in rebuilding the gym or not. So, I don't know.
Like witnessing the aftermath of the crash, did it affect you as a person, or like how you think about air travel, or like how you think about your career?
No, it obviously, when you have a major incident like this, it's going to affect everyone, including law enforcement officers. Each individual handles it differently. Myself, I was able to deal with it, and I think maybe because of my age as a young man, I was able to move forward. As far as a law enforcement career, this didn't affect me as far as going forward. I ended up spending 32 years with the San Diego Police Department before I retired. So I would have to say that, yeah, it affects you, yes. It always affects you, and it's always in the back of your mind, especially every anniversary. And again, now I know a lot more about St. Augustine, and it's kind of amazing sometimes when I walk over there and I kind of look at the old gym and see it and remember kind of flashbacks the way it looked back then in that day.
Did this crash in a way like help you advance in your career as a police officer?
No, I wouldn't say it would help me advance, no. It was just another milestone, so to speak, where, you know, it's like you go from a 7-month rookie into, hey, this is the real world, and this is what we're dealing with as a police officer.
Did you, so as a police officer, you like ranked up, right, to a detective?
Yes, I promoted from patrol officer to what they call agent, still in uniform. Then eventually I went to detectives, and I stayed in detectives for 20 years, the last 20 years of my career.
And did anything that you learned from this crash help you in later investigations or like later incidents that you're investigating?
I would say it didn't help me as much as it gives you a new perspective on how life, one minute could be just normal, and the next thing, your whole world can change. So in that aspect, yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Thank you.